Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in this magical, magnanimous, magnificent, majestic, marvelous, metaphysical, miraculous, mind-awakening, mind-boggling, and mind-blowing planet of ours. This is Inspired Living. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here with you yet again for another soul adventure and another inspiring episode to explore, discuss, and discover the many diamonds within each and every one of us and the many diamonds in our world that have yet to be revealed. So get comfortable, grab your favorite drink, kick back, sit back, or lie back, take in a nice, deep, healing, peaceful, and cleansing breath, and let us prospect together as we discuss today's show topic, which is all about plant medicine, ayahuasca, and the journey within. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. And a big shout out and thank you to all of our inspired listeners from around the globe, the universe, and beyond. My team and I here at Inspired Living are so very humbled and grateful to you for listening, for downloading, for subscribing, for leaving reviews and voting to make Inspired Living podcast a best 100 ranked inspirational show to follow since 2021 and listen to for the last 3 years running now. We do appreciate you. If you have not yet subscribed, liked, or followed the show, there is always time to do so over on our social media platforms at Facebook. Just look for Inspired Living Radio and Podcasts. We have a growing community of almost 3,000 inspired listeners now. You can follow us over on Instagram and Twitter. The name to look for is Inspired For Us. That's the number 4. So Inspired For Us. And, of course, you can always follow us on our YouTube channel, Inspired Living Radio. And we are now streaming through Audible, or you can just open up your favorite podcasting platform and get Inspired Living there. Or you can now simply say, Alexa, open up Inspired Living Podcast to play the latest episode. We like to say to our listeners out there from around the planet, you are the inspired and the inspiration. So for this episode, let's be inspired, let's inspire others, and let's inspire before we expire. Are we ready to go prospecting? Let's go. So today we're going to be welcoming a friend to the show for the first time. He's a former professional firefighter, teacher, and multidimensional energy worker. His name is Karl Drechsler, and he's going to share his stories today and experiences and his journey within by participating in what we would call an ancient and sacred practice of plant medicine, or grandmother medicine, however you want to look at it, of the plants that come from our planet, but it's often referred to by many as ayahuasca. And I want to just talk a little bit for the next hour about the word ayahuasca. Has been, variously translated. It goes by many different things: Liana of the soul, Liana of the dead, and spirit yana. It's also called the purge because it helps to cure the soul, offering a profoundly introspective journey that allows us to examine our emotions and our ways of thinking. Plant medicine is part of the practice of approximately 100 indigenous groups in the Amazon, spread across Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Brazil, and Venezuela. These communities are stewards of the Amazon rainforest, which houses about 10% of the world's known biodiversity. Also notable, these sacred practices with plant medicines are mechanisms by which they commune with the ecosystem and build resilience to protect it from the outside forces. Each of these practices is unique. As anthropologist Luis Eduardo Luna, in his thesis Vegetalism, lists 42 names for the ayahuasca brew, that comes from the, I'm going to try to say this here, I'm sure Karl can correct me, the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. In Brazil alone, the brew is called Uni Nixie Pai Caapi or Kama Api, among other names. The word ayahuasca itself comes from the Quenchi. This language was the official language of the Inca Empire and is still spoken today in various dialects, mainly in Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia. And it comes from the word ayahuasca or huasca, which most agree means rope. Aya, however, is interpreted by some scholars as a reference to death and interpreted by others as a reference to spirit. So it just shows you this minor disagreement provides a glimpse into the considerable implications that can be understood about this plant and the many different meanings it has to different communities. And we have what I would call a subject matter expert, an SME, somebody that's taken this journey several times. And I want to read a little bit about his journey because Karl and I met at an event, and it was just by chance. I guess there's really nothing by chance. But he is a multidimensional energy worker. He is a clear, conscious channel aligned to his higher self, and for the past 11 years, he has worked as a professional firefighter. But about 2.5 years ago, he experienced a major shift in consciousness, which has led him to where he is today. Karl recently left the fire service, so thank you for your service to being a first responder, Karl, to start creating the next chapter in his life with a completely blank canvas. And I love that. Just, if you don't risk it, there's no biscuit. He's a complete yes to life and in the flow with the universe. And like I said, we recently met at a event that I did back in, I think, was it March, I think?
It was April.
Was it April? Okay. And
yeah,
we just started
April.
talking. And we just had this conversation, and what it did is a 5-minute conversation led us to talking about this subject today, ayahuasca, and then it turned into this next connection to be talking about his journey here on Inspired Living. So Karl has sat with the medicine of ayahuasca 11 times, and ceremonies have ranged from Washington State to Costa Rica, and he's gone deep within himself and feels that this is something worth sharing. Holding sacred space and spreading unconditional love and wisdom is at the core of his being. I love this last part, Karl, a lighthouse keeper within this vast multiverse. Welcome to Inspired Living, my friend. How are you?
Thank you, brother. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Happy to be here.
Well, I love these types of stories. Yeah, I love these types of stories. We bring on different guests for Inspired Living, and we've been doing this for 8 seasons. Some are authors, some are other teachers, some are storytellers, and I think today would be a great way to start talking about this ancient plant that has a lot of stigma, that does carry a lot of stereotypes. But I want to talk today for our listening audience out there about the benefits and the journey within of ayahuasca. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you take it away, and you just share with us and our listeners what this journey has been about for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, 2.5 years ago, I had what I would call a pretty major shift in consciousness. It get a little bit more specific. It started off with a Sadhguru initiation. I did the inner engineering program, and it was a 5-day program that literally just shifted me. It shifted how I thought about the world, how I thought about myself, and it was just this heart-opening experience. And I felt like a pretty open heart, but it took it to a whole nother level. And then just started to continue to remain in the fire service and then explore deeper and, got into meditation and just different practices, exploring different modalities and whatnot. And I remember being at work one night. We came back from a call at 2:00 in the morning and went back into my dorm room, hopped back into bed and flipped up my Instagram and came across this picture of a guy getting drops into his eye, and it was Sananga. And I was like, oh, what's that? And clicked on it, and the link that I clicked on eventually led to them also talking about ayahuasca, and they offered it in Washington State. And I was like, that sounds like that might be the next thing. to really just push me outside of my comfort level and to go deeper. I just had this continuous desire to go deep and to go into the darkness, and to just explore myself, whatever I would consider myself to be, and yeah, so then I shortly thereafter, beginning of 2021, I found myself in the foothills of Mount Rainier for ceremony, and that was a weekend experience with 2 nights of taking the medicine, and I didn't, it's that tricky thing. A lot of people will want to look into the specifics and look at like how people react to it and everything like that, and they can throw people in all different types of snowballs, right? Like, you want to go down this path, you want to go down this path, and then people are getting nervous, freaked out, and I didn't really do much research. I just trusted in the process, and I showed up to the location just knowing that the people that I haven't actually physically met yet, we've met on a more multi-dimensional level, and that's a deeper subject in and of itself. But it gave me a lot of peace as we came in to the experience, and plus the location was just magical. Like, being in the energy of Mount Rainier, there was just a mystical, loving feeling to the experience. And then, we had 2 nights of ceremony, and the first night we learned about setting intentions. I kind of came prior to knowing the importance of setting intention, and kind of having a somewhat of a clear idea of what I wanted to accomplish, but at the same time being completely open to what I needed to receive, even though maybe I didn't know it. And that was just that openness of the curiosity of what could come, was really good for myself. And I didn't feel like I was coming into this ceremony with a whole lot of, per se, healing. I wanted to explore consciousness and explore the expansion of that and what that all meant, and what this being, vessel, energy body that I am, what it really entailed. And I remember with the ceremony, the sunset was around 9 p.m. or so, just because of the time of the year in Washington. And we started taking the medicine at 6 p.m. And for me, the medicine doesn't kick in until the sun sets. So that first night, I took a rather large. I took numerous doses. It kind of fluctuates depending on how you're doing with the medicine, but it was served in cups, and I think I took 11 or 12 cups, and not full cups, but they were like the little mini kind of shot size cups.
Right.
But yeah, so I would do that, and felt fine for a little while, and then the sun set, and then the shaman, Klaui, this wonderful lady, told me, wait till the sun sets, and then you'll start to feel it. And I did, and so I went into my own space. I kind of had a little nook. A lot of people had beds that they would lay on. I kind of had a little nook in the kitchen that I just sat in. And my journey wasn't necessarily. I'm sure there was energies, there was things that were being cleared out that I maybe wasn't consciously aware of, but for me, it was very, I could see the grid of the earth. I could see the grid within people. And even the space between me and people, I could see it was green, and it was absolutely incredible, but at the same time, very intense, because all of your senses get heightened. So you hear, like on a whole nother level, you hear the crickets and all of the sounds outside. Everything is just so extreme. And then you're like, as you're thinking through this thing, you're going like, what is going on? That first night for me was just a very blank slate. There was like really no real thought. It was very just present. And it felt like I opened up this portal that I was ready for like night 2 to like explore and go into. And I remember night 2 being really intense, where the music can take you, just into different places, and it can be very loving, and then it can kind of feel like it goes into a dark place, where it's all within you, right? It's just like everybody potentially has this different experience based off of where they're at emotionally, physically, all of the things. And I remember night 2, there was this, I was excited for whatever to happen, to a certain extent, but there was a being that came into the room, and I pretty much lost it. I was like, I'm not ready for this. It was just a black object, and it was essentially like kind of like in one spot, but it was almost like it was like whole body was like waving back and forth, like from top to bottom. And I was like, oh no, this is too much for me. And I was like, I need to go back to my space. And I even had the shaman come over and kind of like talk me through it to a certain extent, because there was a couple other people that also saw it, that I found out the next day that it wasn't just me seeing this. It was some people saw it, some people didn't. But yeah, it was a very intense experience. But at the same time, just full of so much love. Like there's so much to this process where, taking the medicine, you're essentially, the way that it initially felt to me was you're going through death to experience something so profound and magical and just beyond words, that like once you're off the medicine, then you come back to quote unquote reality, then there's this integration. Then it's like, how do you function back in society? For me, it was really intense to like 2 days later go back to the fire service and to go back to what is quote unquote normal, because everything changed for me. And I just remember there was numerous days at work where I was like, none of this shit matters. And it was, not in a negative way. It was just like,
right.
We're just here to have fun. Yeah. We're here to have fun. We're here to, create, and we're here to expand. We're, like all of these problems that we have, like we kind of create them on our own in our own ways. But it was a process for sure. And I've noticed it with a lot of people that I've interacted with, friends that I've met, and different things, different aspects along the way where, post ceremony, it's like, well, do I just leave my job right away? Do I do this? Do I do this? And, like I sat with a knowing that like some shift was going to happen. Didn't know when, for like 1.5 years, 2 years. But becoming more and more present each and every day with, my personal life, my work life, and just watching this beautiful interaction that I have with the universe, the multiverse, and, my guides, the non-physical realms, and then just watching this thing play out that, like, essentially I'm creating. We're all creating in our own way. And it's just, ayahuasca is definitely an intense journey. It's not for everybody. It's kind of like, there's different modalities and different paths for people to take. It's like there's this calling that ayahuasca pulls you into. I was listening to a guy's podcast, or he wasn't in a podcast, he was just on his YouTube channel, but he's a shaman down in Peru. And he says, you think you found ayahuasca. Well, ayahuasca has been calling you and working with you way beyond this lifetime. And that was very profound to me, was like, oh yeah, like there's been this relationship that's been happening. And we're just becoming aware of it, and it's shifting our way of thinking of how we interact with all of these different types of intelligences. I could just talk, like, with this stuff, I could just go and go and go. So,
well, there's so many diamonds packed into that, Karl, that I want to just kind of break down some of this for our listeners. I love the fact you refer to it as medicine. In fact, the ceremony that I'm going to be going to here in less than 3 weeks, they don't actually refer to it as ayahuasca. They actually refer to it as grandmother medicine. And so for our listeners out there, you'll hear a lot of times ayahuasca referred to as a plant medicine coming from the planet, coming from Mother Earth, very ancient, very sacred. And, today's episode, we're trying to knock some of that stigma off of some of the labels that get applied to, ayahuasca, psychedelics, mushrooms, cannabis. I mean, the list goes on and on. But, for those listeners out there, there's been a lot of research done, especially with what I do in my day job. I work for the Veterans Administration, and the benefits of working with such plant medicines for depression, anxiety, suicidal ideology, those types of things. And they're really looking at it from a mental health standpoint for a medicine that helps transform and heal, but also can change the alchemy of who we are to have that perspective. And I love that your first experience was, now mine's not going to be at Mount Rainier. I wish it was, because when you said Mount Rainier, mine's going to be outside. It's 3 days, but for privacy, I'm not going to say too much for right now. But, what's interesting about Mount Rainier, we've done past episodes, and a lot of people don't realize that the term flying saucer from 47 comes from Mount Rainier. One of the first sightings ever recorded on FAA radio communications was a pilot who had seen 9 silver discs floating around Mount Rainier, and he referred to them as flying saucers. And that's where the term flying saucer today actually stems. So it makes you wonder from a multidimensional standpoint, because we talk about multidimensional beings, multidimensions, the multiverse. It's very interesting that certain places around the planet have this very spiritual, energetic connection that helps you see. So I love that you had it around Mount Rainier. That's pretty cool. Now, my first question is, why do you think it's based on the sunset? Why did the medicine kick in at sunset? I'm just curious.
Yeah, there's a lot of different thoughts, I would imagine. There's things that I have experienced, and so it works for me, and it works within my understanding. It's going to be different for everybody. So I always say everything is like take it or leave it, right? But Chloe, my shaman, during this first ceremony, she says your pineal gland activates maybe in a different way as the sun sets. And so something within us, within like our makeup, does that. So, because I've even experienced, so like Changa is smokable DMT, and like I've tried that during the day, and not really had much of any type of effect. And I've done it in the evening when the sun sets, and I've had a very profound effect. So there's something going on there. You know, I'm not the scientist or doctor or anything like that, but it's just it's and I've known and I've seen people during ceremony that they've had their experience start before then. So it's not you know, all the way across the board. It's just, I guess, certain people have more of an enhanced reaction at a specific time in the sun setting. Even when I was down in Costa Rica, the sun set at around 5:36, and we would sit in ceremony until about 30 minutes after the sun set, and then we took the medicine. And that was everybody. So, yeah.
It's subjective. I get that. But I like a point that you said for our listening audience. Explain the pineal gland, I've heard it both ways, tomato, but explain to the listeners what that gland is, because that makes a lot of sense, actually, based on, you know, I always say that we have three eyes in life, two to look, which is our physical eyes, and then the third eye, which is one to see. And that third eye is connected literally to the pineal gland, which has the same makeup as our physical eye. So for our listening audience, just kind of explain that whole pineal gland process, because that made a lot of sense when you said that about the sun going down.
Yeah, and this is from my understanding, you know, like scientifically, I'm not going to give you the complete rundown just because that's not my expertise. But you know, just that that little, you know, that little point in our brain that essentially can be calcified, from my understanding, depending on different things that we consume, or we can decalcify it by cleaning up our system and everything like that, and then which allows for you know, more activation of our third eye, and there's a variety of different ways that can like go into play. I was just at a conference this last weekend, and they're talking about, you know, blind people being able to open up their third eye and see like 360 degrees, and like there's that. I did a 7-day darkness retreat last year, and I was able to open and close my third eye like on demand. So it's just the pineal gland being able to have that connection to higher realms or alternate realities, I guess you could say. And energetically, when I've worked with it, I know that, you know, like you can make it on a non-physically, just energetically, you can make it larger. And so the idea of like it's a certain size, like I work on making it larger through my consciousness, and to have that can actually add to different types of experiences. So the more we can clean up our system, that's why it's. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's a good stopping point right there. We're gonna go to our first break, and when we come back, let's pick up this conversation about the pineal gland, the journey of ayahuasca, and the journey within. So we're going to be right back with our special guest today, Karl Drechsler, talking about plant medicine. This is Inspired Living. We'll be back here in 2 minutes.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing a job
and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Inspired Living. I want to read a couple quotes of a gentleman I follow by the name of Graham Hancock, and I was doing some research about today's show. We're talking about ayahuasca, the journey within, with our special guest Karl Drechsler, who has done this experience of sacred practice many, many times and is really just sharing his experiences and storytelling. But Graham Hancock says this: there are all kinds of ways to challenge ourselves. Some people do it by climbing a mountain or scuba diving. The most profound and challenging ordeals is to drink ayahuasca. It is in a way the ultimate adventure. And I'm all about, as the Intuitive Prospector, I'm all about soul adventures. I'm all about climbing mountains as a hiking guide. I'm all about diving our oceans as an advanced certified scuba diver. So when I saw this quote for today's show, Karl, I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then the other one that he says is, quote, all politicians should be required to drink ayahuasca 10 times before taking office. And I think with today's society, I'm like, man, that's very profound. There's a lot of wisdom there that all politicians should drink ayahuasca. So welcome back. Let's pick up where we left off before the break, talking about the pineal gland, because I think that's important, because we've done past shows, past episodes, talking about the metaphysics and, you know, this gland that does take a lot of abuse. It's uses some of I think the second most blood flow off the aorta from the heart. So it's a very interesting gland. And of course, it has the same makeup as our eyeballs. So that's why we refer to it many times as the third eye. But as far as before the break, you were talking about you were able, through different experiences and through different ceremonies, to actually open and close and expand your third eye, which I think is very fascinating.
Yeah, so there's I look at things in kind of two different ways. You got you obviously your physical, and then you have your energetic, right? And so, and I strongly believe that the energetic comes first. And so it's like we can do physical stuff like do zeolite clay, right? Consume zeolite clay, which passes your blood-brain barrier and detox and takes out heavy metals and toxins and stuff like that. Can work on decalcifying your pineal gland. You can, stay away from fluorides and stuff like that, which, there's a variety of different things that says like how you could physically do different things to work with that. I like doing stuff like sound frequency, right? I like listening to different things because it's, going into your subconscious, reprogramming your system, but at the same time, you can do specific frequencies for your third eye, for your pineal gland. And so you can easily find those things on Spotify or YouTube. I've been doing those quite a bit, just, intuitively, just what I feel I need, quote unquote need at the time, as just kind of keeping my system clear. And the more we do those things, then we're just kind of just taking out the trash a little bit. I like to call it defragging our system, and just to keep it more in alignment. And I think that when we do those things prior to, obviously, ceremony, just puts us into a better place for when we sit with the medicine, because it's like ayahuasca, it's very loving, right? It's a very heart-opening experience. And so it's going to be pretty intense for a lot of people if they're not very heart-centered.
Sure.
It's like you're jumping to this extreme, and you're feeling this unconditional love. And I felt the same thing when I did my 7-day dark retreat. Like, I felt like this incredible, just unrelenting, unconditional love by being in the darkness. And it's kind of its own experience, very similar, but in a, obviously in a very different way.
Sure.
But I think it's not something to necessarily fear. It's just, there's going to be a nervous excitement probably, but it's trusting. And so, like, I always remembered, like, during ceremony, when things get really intense, just anchor back into the fact that that you are love. You are unconditional love at your core. At your core, you are this luminous light. And, like, I've even sat with ayahuasca at home by myself, and I've had friends ask me, did you have someone sit with you? Like, how could you do that by yourself? I'm like, well, I'm at a place where I'm comfortable enough to take that journey within by myself. And it's intense, but I also know that I have called in, so many of my helpers and my guides that are constantly with me, that are really, truly doing the process. I'm just like kind of the observer. And, those intentions that also come in as, like, when you're doing the ceremony, to be calling in your guides and calling in, spirit ancestors and whatever you want to call it, right? It's whatever works for anybody, but just calling in, like, I call in high forms of unconditional love, and, calling in what's best for me during the experience. And then, again, when you have those moments where you're like, what the heck is going on? Then just pull yourself back and holding to those frequencies that that will surround you, protect you, and keep you going in the direction that's best for you.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and I love the timing of this too, because in the next 3 weeks we have this show today, and we had planned this show about a month ago. So it's just the timing is interesting to me, because I'm about to get a tattoo, which is my True North tattoo, and then a couple weeks later I go on this 3-day experience. We're on here on Inspired Living talking about this today, and I love the storytelling and the recommendations, because you yourself is like a veteran. You've done this 11 times, and I'm getting ready to do this for my first time, right? So I am nervous. But I also approach it, like you said, with intention, because trust is a big part of the spiritual pathway, and trust is a big part of that. But you also said frequencies, and when you were saying that, I was thinking of Nikola Tesla, when he said, if you want to unlock the secrets of the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration, and we are energy beings here having a human experience. So I'm excited for that, but the physical side of me is like, okay, I'm in good hands. I have a sponsor.
Yep.
I have to do a detox before I go, and so I had to do a medical. They looked at my medical, so I'm okay there. But it's just that unknowingness. It's that curiosity, that soul adventure of what's going to unfold, right?
Am I going to be puking the whole time? Am I going to be shitting my brains out? All of that
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah. And, when I was doing my research, they talked about La Purge, and I'm like, oh, great. I'm with people that I don't know. Same experience as you. I've never met these people in this physical world, but it's kind of very similar to what you said when you did it with, at Mount Rainier. And doing my research on this, there was a couple things that really stood out to me. One is that going back to that intention, because ayahuasca loves to take, from the research I've done, it loves to take prideful people and pretty much rub their nose in it. So if you're not a heart-centered person, if you're not setting intent, I mean, it can make you beg for mercy like nothing, but you have to really approach it from a humble standpoint is what I've researched. And then, of course, I've also seen that ayahuasca is a symbiotic ally of the human species. So that symbiotic relationship is very important. But yeah, the whole purge and the puking and, in front of people I don't know, I'm like, I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm going to trust the process.
It's part of the ego, right? It's like ayahuasca is a part of ego death, right? And it's like, get over yourself, right? And it's like everybody's here for each other. And I do a pretty good amount of preparation. So like I'm probably on the extreme end where like I'll do like intermittent fasting kind of the days and weeks prep for like leading up to ceremony. I'll even do cleanses like kind of cleaning out my colon and my system like literally the couple days before, and I will go in completely dry, like fasting for the whole ceremony. So it's like a lot of times people are like, they stop eating at noon and then in the evening they go to ceremony. So they're always like, oh, I'm starving. And I have nothing in my system. It's me, the energy body that I am. And and so sometimes it's like, if you eat and you'll purge it out, but it's like, it's the medicine. She's like just telling you, all right, you need to get rid of this stuff that you're holding on to. And it can be energetically, it could be physically, right? It could be the purge. I know that some people will do Kambo, Kambo, right? Like days prior, getting ready. I've done a self-application course for Kambo, so I do it on myself. And like a couple weeks prior to my Costa Rica trip, I did Kambo, and it's kind of like it's an energetic physical purge, not very pleasant, but it's what you need, not necessarily what you want. And it's really good, can be really good for leading people into ceremony. And like for me, when I went down to Costa Rica, I was like, there was something I was feeling like I needed to throw up. And it was like, it wasn't nauseous. I just had this feeling that something needed to go. So I did the Kambo. It lasts, the process is 30, 45 minutes, and I purged. And then right at the very end, it was like, there was something else. There was something more. And then a little bit more came up, and I was like, that was it. And it just paved the way that much more for ceremony for me. But, it's just, there's times where I've seen people violently puking for a while, but like you said, it's kind of like that humbling thing that they needed. They didn't maybe come in with the right intentions, or maybe they thought they had a specific intention and something else was going on. But being able to just be okay with whatever happens in the process, right? And like realizing that if you have to throw up, or if you have to shit your pants, it's a natural process, and to be okay with it, and to realize that the people there are going to support you in the process as well. Like in Costa Rica, like people were doing their thing, and I was like literally laying on my mat kind of felt like I was a monkey just observing everything. But I just was like,
right.
but I was like sending love and compassion to everybody and their experience, because it was their experience. You know, we often like want to help people, right? And it's just like, well, are we even really here to help people? We're here to have this experience, but to like send and just hold this sacred space for them is huge. And this last ceremony, I went in with the intention of bringing in higher forms of unconditional love. And every single ceremony, we had 3 of them over 7 days. I just held that thought and intention and frequency the whole time. And then to watch the ceremony play out, but then also to then afterwards have share circle, and how everybody's experiences was that much more profound, because holding a high frequency pulls people up into that space. And it's magical. It's absolutely magical. And so it's like, and even the resistance that people have during ceremony, after you do it, then you're like, all right, game on. Like, you know, like that was incredible. Let's do this, you know? And then people will do it more, you know, people will, you know, not feel like they need it, you know, like, yeah, I've done it, you know, a dozen times, but it's like, I don't feel like I personally need it. But there's times where it just kind of comes up. And if I'm like Costa Rica was actually, I went down with a friend, and my friend wanted to have the experience, and I was just going to hold space with her while we were down there. And then just how profound it ended up being. And then, which then led to me resigning from the fire department 3 days later. And I was like, I had this expansive like feeling when I was taking a bath a couple days after I got back, and I was like, oh, now's the time. Now's the time to close that chapter and open up this new one, and to start this new one at this high place that I couldn't even imagine that it could even be that much better. And it just keeps getting better and better and better.
I love that. And I think part of this alignment for this show today is we both are, you know, I'm a retired firefighter, professional firefighter, did 13 years before I had to retire from, you know, medical injury, but it's that heart to serve, right? Being a first responder, and just a big shout out to all of our first responders, police, fire, nurse, hospital. It's having that heart to serve and to help others in need, and to hold space for others during trying times. And it's interesting because, you know, during my career, I started to have that shaking that caused the awakening, and I started to, you know, we're called to other people's traumas and tragedies, right? That's what we've been called to do. But then you realize at some point that this path no longer serves the higher self, the transformation. And I too ended up stepping away after my injury, and was really heartbroken about it. But now I look back at it and go, oh no, this was what's supposed to happen, because it puts me on the air today talking with you about this journey, and sharing with our listening audience about the power of transformation and the process of an alchemy. You know, a spiritual awakening is not easy. So for you listeners out there, if you've had a shakening that's caused the awakening, give yourself time, give yourself patience, give yourself grace, and, you know, start to look at modalities that will help you with transformation and healing and conscious expansion, right? That's a big, I heard somebody say, in truth, ayahuasca is the television of the forest. And so that kind of helped put me at ease to be like, well, I love television. I always say that nature is my religion. And so if it's a television for the forest, I'm looking forward to that. But I'm also making a note, bring an extra pair of pants. So
just in case.
Just in case that we're going to need it. But as far as, you know, just because we're running out of time, these shows are so fascinating and interesting to me. What would you say, just for the listening audience out there, just kind of wrap this, let's put a bow on this for ayahuasca and its sacredness and its intention and its connection. How would you just put a bow on top of this for the, you know, the journey within for ayahuasca?
It's absolutely incredible. Like, you know, you're talking about the whole, like the neurons, the reconnecting of the pathways of our system. And just what's oftentimes the disconnecting part. It's like the heart, right? Like some people have their upper chakras open, but like their lower chakras are, not as open, or vice versa. It depends on male, female a lot of times, but
right.
That opening of the heart is the connecting of your whole system. It's like essentially opening it all up. And then there's these reconnections that are happening. Your neurons are now firing in different ways, and all this stuff energetically is happening. And there's an instant, like you're instantly jumping timelines, like, and like that's its own whole other thing. But it's like you're literally not in the same reality after your experience. Like that's literally constantly happening every single day, whether we realize it or not. But like, it's much more profound in this process. And, there's just so much benefit and people will do it when they feel like it's right for them. There's no need to rush it. Right. It's some people they're like, no, I'm not in the right mind place yet. Perfect.
Exactly.
Not meant to do it yet, but you will know when, if it's for you, because there's all these different modalities. Like some people, ayahuasca, it's not going to be for them. Mushrooms, it could be for them. Some people, it's going to be sound frequencies. Some people, it's going to be sound bowls. Like who knows what, but it's all good no matter what. Like, just trusting and surrendering that you're on the right path. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, and these things that we get to now experience just open that up even more for us, and then just give us that much more ease that exactly where we are is perfect, and that we are perfect. We're just all remembering.
Wow. And again, going back to that frequency conversation, because I just literally had this conversation with one of my coworkers before we came live on the air, and we were talking about frequency and sound healing. And for the listening audience out there, if you've never seen the power of frequency, I always say just go to YouTube, type in sand table and frequency, and you'll actually see a table with just a bunch of sand on it. And what they do is they hook the table up to different frequencies, like 532, 432 hertz, and they adjust the frequency. And the sand on the table will actually create sacred geometry, fascinating flowers and triangles and squares based off the frequency. That's always been fascinating. That's when I became a true believer of frequency, from either, binaural beats or sound baths, and even became a certified sound healer myself, because I saw how, with my own eyes, the experience of how frequency can create this sacred geometry just based on sand. And so, for the listening audience out there, go check that out, because it's visually, seeing is believing in a sense. But for me, frequency is a big part of this journey as well. And this is 3 years in the making for me to do this. You talked about when the time is right. This has been 3 years of preparing for this, and it's going to happen in about 3 weeks. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. We were meant to meet, to have this next part of the journey.
Exactly, brother. And I look forward to maybe doing something in the future with you, since you're a veteran of this journey and I'm just I'm the rookie. So if we apply firefighting terms, you're the veteran and I'm the probie. So
I love it.
I'm just starting this journey of being a probational ayahuasca soul adventure, if you will. But before we end the show, I was doing some research, and a gentleman had talked about, the other side of the spiritual veil, about if you spend a little bit more time researching, hallucinogens, working with psychedelics, he personally believed that ayahuasca is one of the greatest natural healing agents, period, with this plant medicine. Would you agree with that?
I would say, yeah. It's that's ayahuasca. There's the physical and the energetics, right? And I say that, it's absolutely powerful. But then once we get further along and realize that the energy, like the consciousness, because it's all consciousness, right? The intelligence is within the medicine, but then we are also that consciousness, and we can elevate ourselves even higher and higher. It's the bridge, right? It's the bridge of the true knowing. It's sometimes I call it a cheat code, or sometimes, skipping some steps, but it's like, sometimes it's people need that experience to then realize what they're really truly capable of. And I believe people are more powerful than they can even imagine. They can do anything, and anything is possible. And experiencing ayahuasca, you see into the future, and you see what our true potentials are, and then we can just bring them closer and closer, sooner and faster, with just a better understanding of how it all plays out.
Perfect. I think, and we'll finish this. It's not what we want; it's what we need. So, Karl, if my listening audience has questions for you, real quick, best way to get a hold of you?
Hey, on your, they can email me. I'm totally cool with email. Karl, Karl.Drechsler, Drechsler @gmail.com. I have a little Instagram thing, Karl, at Karl29D. Anyhow, that's cool with me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being a guest on the show. Until our next solo adventure together, be kind, be caring, be compassionate, and most importantly, wherever you're at in this world, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. We'll see you next time for another episode of Inspired Living. Have a great rest of your day. Namaste.